Our group will be talking about the Occupy Wall Street movement. During this presentation, I'll be discussing the overview of Occupy Wall Street by providing details of the movement and background as well. Lauren will then discuss the main parties involved in the conflict, as well as the central issues surrounding the movement. Michael will describe the prevalence of social media in the movement, and Kathryn will talk about the effects of communication and how it is still an issue. She will then conclude the presentation by wrapping it up. I will be discussing the overview of Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street began in 2011 on September 17th in New York City, New York. This movement was created because Americans wanted to see a change within their economic system. They wanted to see this change because of the growing wealth gap between the rich and the poor. Americans felt that they were not given the same job opportunities as large corporations like the ones on Wall Street. Wall Street is one of the most famous streets because it is known for its role in the international financial system. On the street are located some of the wealthiest companies in the United States. The movement shed light on the 99% and their experiences in a capitalistic society. After this movement started, it ended up spreading to other places around the country.
Occupy Wall Street is a people-powered movement that attests to the strength of the group. The movement is inspired by the uprisings in Egypt and Tunisia with aims to fight back against the 1%. Those directly involved in the Occupy Wall Street movement are frustrated with the unfair global economy that is foreclosing on our future. While technically Occupy Wall Street is a leaderless movement, there have been many people that have emerged as frontrunners for the movement. For example, Micah White is an award-winning activist that co-created Occupy Wall Street. Furthermore, in a research survey conducted by a Baruch College professor, it was found that 64% of those involved with the movement are under the age of 35. Occupy Wall Street should be understood as a further development or a permutation of these political demands. One obvious and clear message of the protests is that bankers and finance industries in no way represent the majority of Americans. Those who have a vested interest in the outcome of the Occupy Wall Street movement are those who wield more power than the average American. Whether this be wealthy politicians, upper-class citizens, and the moguls of Wall Street, anyone whose economic and financial interests could be swayed by the Occupy Wall Street movement have a vested interest in the outcome. Because Occupy Wall Street is a leaderless movement, it can be hard to hone down on what the group's ideals are. According to OccupyWallStreet.org, the conflict for the primary parties is fighting back against the corrosive power of major banks and multinational corporations over the democratic process and the role of Wall Street in creating an economic collapse that has caused the greatest recession in generations. Furthermore, protesters want to take power away from the super rich and give power and resources back to the average American people.
Communication was and still is an issue when it comes to Occupy Wall Street. Many have seen the movement as a group of young people with time on their hands and have not cared to address the conflict. Despite this, some government leaders, including former President Barack Obama and members of Congress, have made statements regarding the protest, but not much real progress has actually come about regarding the pay gap. While many people in the public have communicated and addressed the issue, the people who can make change regarding the conflict have made no effort to do so, and with there being not much legislation changed in regards to the protests and conflict, no real goals have been met.
Many movements in this day and age gain traction through social media, and Occupy Wall Street was one of them. Occupy Wall Street trended heavily on Facebook and Twitter. This shows the shift in communication that has occurred within recent years. Many things start out online and then form into a movement in the streets. This causes people from all over the world to join the movement. In instances such as this, the movement becomes big enough to trend and the conflict explodes across all facets of media and draws in thousands of people to the site of the movement. This also shows how easily a leaderless movement can form nowadays. People are able to form a movement based on resistance against a common enemy without ever meeting in real life. This resistance is formed because of a difference in needs. The wage gap causes the protesters to want to be paid more, while the upper class they are fighting against wants to maintain all of their wealth.
In conclusion, while Occupy Wall Street garnered a lot of attention, in the end, it did not have the communication with the government and businesses needed to make a real change regarding the wage gap in the United States. There is still a power dynamic amongst different wage gaps, and that is not likely to change until real legislation becomes involved. This is still an ongoing problem with much support behind it, but the leaders in the 1% with power positions need to get involved for the conflict to form a real conclusion.